Everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Resources for Modern Retirement. I hope you've been having a good summer, even though it's been a little bit on the warm side. It's been a while. I think I've lost count with the days because of COVID and because of having different podcasts, but I know that it's time for another podcast. And today, you're in store for some really interesting information. You're going to meet an interesting guy. You see him next to me. I'm Loretta, of course, you know that, but I'll remind you. And I am a life coach, but also a retirement coach. Lately, my focus has been more on retirement and transitions. I have to say, I'll tell you, just this morning, I was talking with my daughter who is 40, and I've got a daughter who's 50 also, but I keep hearing stories about people saying, I'm getting kind of tired in the work that I'm doing, and I know that I shouldn't really be ready to move on just yet, but I don't know what to do. It's like, do I give it, not have the salary that I've had for my family and try another type of occupation, or what should I do? I think today's guest is going to be talking to us about retirement, but I think a lot of the hints that he has to say could even help with thinking about how you want to see yourself in the future, and whether that future is when you're 60, 70, 80, or whether it's when you're maybe 50. If you're 40, it probably can help. So I'd like you to say hello to Eric Weigel, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself. And I'll say, hi, Eric. Good morning.
Good morning, Loretta. Thank you very much for having me on your wonderful show. So I'm Eric Weigel. I live in Boston. I'm a retirement coach and advisor. My focus, I started my career really a long way away from retirement. And I really didn't start thinking about retirement probably till I turned 50. I'm 62 now. Sort of I got to the field of retirement coaching by applying it to my own life, really. It was really, I turned 50. I had just recently gotten divorced. And my job also in the 2008 financial crisis sort of went away pretty much. I mean, at least the way it was before then. After the crisis, the job became a lot tougher, a lot more, less fun. And I started really thinking about not only working in a different field, and what I wanted to do was work more with people, but I was also thinking about all aspects of my life. I had been pretty much kind of looking straight ahead throughout my career. I had a wonderful family, 3 kids, all healthy, thank God. But it was really a period of time when I started rethinking a lot of my assumptions and just thinking ahead, especially given all the longevity statistics about living 30 or 40 years longer. I thought that was a long time to not really have a plan for the rest of my life.
Good for you. I mean, you really were talking to yourself and thinking about that. So often people just have
Absolutely.
the blinders on and even their ears are covered. It's sort of like, no, I'm just going to do this until I'm 100. But yes.
So no, and what I found actually when I first started sort of rethinking some of my assumptions, I found a lot of advice on the financial side. And that's because most retirement is still pretty much, the topic is still viewed as primarily financial. And I had a lot of questions, and none of them were financial because I was a financial guy. I was coming from that background. I also didn't really need a lot of help in terms of real estate because I bought properties and sold properties. But what I really needed help was a lot of the, like, what I would call the softer side of retirement, but which in a lot of cases was a lot more important. And I didn't really find much out there. There really, when you did a Google search 10, 12 years ago on retirement, really the top 50 suggestions were all financial. So that was the main reason why I thought that I had to explore personal growth. And that's where I started looking at a lot of the personal growth literature. And then about 6, 7 years ago, I think it was, I came across this field of retirement coaching. And I came across Bob Laura, who is the founder of the Certified Professional Retirement Coaching Association. And I thought, wow, this is a really interesting program. And I took the program, got certified, and that was how I got into this field.
Well, you are indeed an inspiration, because that process right there is what all retirement coaches hope to have people go through. And if they've gone through it and realize they need some help, which who doesn't need help, then looking for a retirement coach is the ideal thing. If they can go through it and search on their own and come up with something and be motivated to try something, there was plenty out there now, but some is good and some is not as good as others. So for example, your new book, Reimagining Retirement, 9 Keys to True Wealth, is something that I'd love to have you share with our listeners, because I want you to talk about the overall message of your book. Your book goes into a lot of detail, and we don't have time for all of that, but the overall message, and then we'll delve into it a little bit more.
Yeah. So the overall message, or the main message was that retirement is a lot more than just about the money. And that's why, for example, when people think about the word wealth, a lot of times they think about money. But I wanted to kind of play on that word, and by really saying that, in my case, I identify 9 areas of your life, the 9 keys to true wealth. Your wealth is not only financial, but also non-financial, as we all know. And these are areas, for example, like your relationships, which are incredibly important, not only for your sense of satisfaction in life, but even for your health. There's health, for example, there's work. A lot of people are electing to, for example, work in retirement. And I think you mentioned this in the introduction, Loretta, how your daughters are struggling with this issue of balance in life. And when I wrote the book, I wrote it applied to retirement, to baby boomers, either thinking about retirement or in their early stages of retirement. But in reality, the book really applies to any stage in life where you're trying to question, where do you really want to go? So just going back to your question about the overall message, it's more about, focusing on all areas of your life that are important to you. I identify 9 areas. Clearly, some of these areas may not be that important to some people, but in general, I find that people are multidimensional in kind of what they're looking for in life. I also think that the other message is you got to know what you want. You have to know who you want to become and why. That's really important. So in other words, thinking ahead, because without a plan, without a vision, where are you going to end up? Probably somewhere where the wind takes you, for example. And then the final component of my message is that you really have to take action. So just wishing that you end up in a certain place in life is really not enough. It's really about taking action. And that's the key message of the book.
And so interesting and well put, Eric. But the thing that comes to mind immediately is the fog and the paths. Wait a minute, this way, that way. Wait, yes, but and I can golf and tennis, and maybe I'll teach, and maybe I'll do. How do you do it? And I think you call this person a future self. So
Right.
how, what, yeah. Is there a way to make it, well, simple is not a good word, because it's not simple, but it's important. And have you got any secrets that we can share?
Well, maybe not secrets, but what I'll tell you is that I definitely agree with you that today's retirement, there's a lot of complexity in the world. We have more and more options available to us, and more complexity actually creates, a lot of people think that more complexity creates more, it's good for you. But the reality is more complexity can create a lot of stress if you're always questioning your choices. So the trick, or the secret, if you will, in my opinion, is to actually narrow down your choice. So in the sea of complexity, it's picking your path. It's not the path of your parents or your grandparents. It's not the path of your neighbor. It's your path, along with that, of course, if you have a partner, of your partner. So I think that it's interesting that actually saying no to a lot of um, options is actually, I think, the key to kind of figuring out what you want in your future. And your future, as we all know, there's a lot of randomness to life, and you can't really predict exactly where you're going to be 10 years from now or 20 years from now. But I think you can predict a sense of direction. And I think that's what this notion of your future self involves, which is really like imagining, what do you want your life to look like in the future? How do you want your life to turn out? Who do you want to be around you? And I came across this idea from Stephen Covey, the management guru, that he many years ago had this question, or this he said, imagine your 80th birthday party. Who's going to be there? What's the vibe going to be? And when I first heard that, I thought, wow, this is fantastic, because I'm closing my eyes and I'm imagining my kids, my grandchildren, my friends. I mean, even imagining the music and the setting, and what people are going to say about me, kind of like, okay, but I they better be truthful, right? So my life better be accurate, up to that point. And that's sort of the idea of your future self, which is a term that academics use, but I think it resonates, at least with me, that it actually has influenced how I think of sort of my sense of direction in life.
Now, what comes to mind again, I know I keep saying what comes to mind, but you make me think in a lot of directions, and that's so really so important. Um, we all have fantasies, oh, I'm going to be, I'm going to swim and I'm going to win awards, or I'm going to be a famous author and go cross country in my tours, or things that are not necessarily, they're fantasies, basically. And there's nothing wrong with a fantasy, but I think my point is you have to get real. And how do you get real with yourself, especially if maybe you're not a person who really gets down and thinks and has a good imagination? Are there any tools or help? I mean, obviously, a retirement coach is a very good idea, but I think that what we're going to offer people is the thought of how you can try to do it yourself too.
Yeah. So a retirement coach is a great idea for opening up, questions, opening up your mind. But I like one concept that I came across, which makes a lot of sense to me, is that of a retirement superhero. So a superhero meaning a role model. So they're probably people that everybody has come across that they say to themselves, wow, that person working as a volunteer at the library, or the person working, just cleaning, like taking care of the local landscape, or that relates really well to their grandchildren. So you've probably come across somebody in your life that you want to emulate. And I think if you really can't sort of figure this out for yourself, use a role model. You know, ask yourself, what kind of behaviors, or even better, ask that person, how do you get here? How do you get to the point where your life seems so fulfilling and so full of meaning? And you always seem to have the right attitude and sort of a smile on your face. Because I think at the end of the day, that's a life well lived, right? And if we have a smile on our face and relate well to people, that's a huge accomplishment. So the role of a superhero is one. I think the other thing is, and you alluded to this with a retirement coach, being able to bring out some of these questions. Journaling is another wonderful approach where you just sit down with a piece of paper. I suggest you do it, you don't do it once. None of this stuff ever happens the first time you try it, but you really just wake up every morning, spend 10 minutes just writing down some ideas that come to mind. And eventually that picture will become crystal clear. But it will take some time, just like when you're working with a retirement coach or even thinking about it yourself, you may come up with various versions of your future self, which by the way, you never ever get to the point where you're your future self. You're always evolving.
Uh-huh. Um, when you're journaling, and I think journaling is a wonderful idea, and you're picturing this life for yourself, what are the different areas? You talk about core values and beliefs in your book, I know, and you talk about, I certainly try to emphasize family and maybe giving back to the community. Do you have any thoughts on how you organize that journal? I know it's going to be free flowing, but maybe one day talking about a particular topic, or on that day talking about various topics, just having columns. What do you think?
I think it should be very unstructured. It should be what comes to mind. But I always like to kind of point to one or two areas that seem to resonate with everybody that I talk to. One is relationships, family and friends. That is incredibly important in retirement. The research shows that. But if you just focus on that, for example, focus on how do I want to relate to the people in my life over the next 10, 20 years? What, and for example, a lot of decisions will emerge from that. So for example, people that are retiring or in the process of retiring, for example, a lot of them struggle with where to live. Do I stay put? Do I move closer to my children and grandchildren? A lot of that really is about relationships and the value you attach to those relationships. And the second big area that I think is really important beyond the financial is really health. Because your health really, really influences everything that you're able to do in retirement. And I think if you picture yourself, for example, being active when you're 80 years old, being able to go for a 2 or 3 mile hike in a beautiful location, being able to get on a plane by yourself or with your partner and travel all the way to Fiji. Let's pick a nice place like that.
Okay, when do we
Could be
leave?
another place, but Fiji sounds pretty good to me. I've never been there, but that's one of my go-to places, or it will be, hopefully. So I think it's unstructured, and if you just let your mind wander, your subconscious will sort of emerge little by little, because most of our thinking is actually happens in our subconscious mind. And if you actually try and force it too much, it becomes more of like homework exercise, and
Understand.
that's not the intent here. The intent is really to have your true feelings emerge from this.
I understand. What about purpose? Finding your purpose. Relationships, of course, that gives you've got to have a community or a tribe or people that you can turn to, you can laugh with, you can cry with, you can enjoy. But there's a lot of hours in the day. And why am I getting up in the morning? And what is this future person that I'm thinking about at age 80? Where am I going? What am I doing?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I always start with the question with my clients. I ask them, do you want the easy life, or do you want a satisfying and fulfilling life? And that makes them think, because the status quo is usually an easy life. I'm going to retire, play golf. I'm going to go out to happy hours and nice meals and travel, take 1 or 2 trips a year. And that's all about yourself and pretty much the easy life. And as you say, as you just said, there are a lot of hours in the day. That's not going to keep you fulfilled for during long seasons of life, and so I turn the question and I say, okay, what in the past is giving you satisfaction? That's usually where I start. What is giving you great satisfaction? Maybe it was some volunteering that you did 5, 10 years ago. It might have been only one event, but if that gave you a lot of satisfaction, maybe that's an idea. For example, in my case, I love working with kids. I used to coach youth soccer. I've coached tennis. And I know working with kids gives me incredible satisfaction. Playing sports gives me incredible satisfaction. And I think, okay, how can I share those skills and that interest down the road? And for me, it's coaching tennis, and being able to, be involved in the lives of young people by mentoring.
Beautiful.
So I think you got to think, what has given you satisfaction? Again, this is not something that you can write down on a piece of paper and say, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. It's really has to come from inside you.
Exactly. Oh, that's beautifully put. It has to come from within. So I know that you do include 9 keys, but we don't have time to talk about all of them. I love the idea that people have to understand you're playing with that word wealth, because wealth can be money in the bank, and it can be also finding your own happiness and your satisfaction. And I think those are 2 very important parts about making this transition from full-time work to whatever it is you're doing in retirement. I think that we have sufficiently dangled the ideas in front of our audience here. And I know that you have actually offered very kindly a 15-minute discussion for free, if people would like to talk with you. And there's no strings attached whatsoever, as well as explain also maybe a little bit more about your book to them. At the end of this, actually, I'd like verbally for you to tell people how to reach you. But at the end of this, we will have a screen that shows your contact information and any other important part, the name of your book. That was the other thing I wanted to make sure we say. This has been fantastic, Eric. Do you have any other last things to say to our audience?
Well, thanks, Loretta. I think this has been great. I think I guess that the one final thought, it's up to all of us to create our own life of possibilities, or I call it Retirement with Possibilities. That's the name actually of my company, where I offer, where I offer retirement coaching to people. So you can reach me at Eric Weigel at retirementwithpossibilities.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name. I have a Facebook page, and my book, Reimagining Retirement, is available on Amazon, both in Kindle and paperback version. So I think that, and as and you can also go on my website, and there's an offer for a free chapter, the introductory chapter. So if anybody wants to just figure out if the book is for them, that might be a good way to start. And again, the website is retirewithpossibilities.com.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I hope that everyone has enjoyed this latest resource for modern retirement, because we've got a lot of years ahead, and there's a lot of fun to be had and a lot of people to help out there. And I appreciate you, Eric. Thank you so much. And bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Loretta. And thanks to everybody.
See you next
Thank you.
time. Bye.